Men can have multiple non-ejaculatory orgasms back to back. And this is actually a fairly natural skill for men. But the reason why few men know about this and even less can do it has everything to do with your nervous system, how you've trained it to engage during sex. And the truth is that with a bit of rewiring of your nervous system and your experience of sex and pleasure, you can have non-ejaculatory orgasms as often as you want, as many times as you want, without experiencing the refractory period. So in this video, I'm going to break down the two main types of orgasms men can have, why most men are only able to have ejaculatory orgasms, and the nervous system switch that you can make to start experiencing non-ejaculatory orgasms. Let's get into it. I'm Jonathan White, and after spending 12 years studying intensively in Taoist sexual practices and Tantra, I've been able to help thousands of men from around the world learn to master their sexual energy and create an epic life. Make sure you hit subscribe to stay updated when new content like this drops, and make sure you get my free ejaculation control book through the link in the description of this video. It will help you learn to have legendary ejaculation control. 99% of men do not know what you are about to learn. Men can have two types of orgasms, and to be honest, it gets even more complex than that. But to make it really simple, the two types of orgasms men can experience are ejaculatory orgasms and non-ejaculatory orgasms. Why would you want to have non-ejaculatory orgasms? Well, when you ejaculate, certain hormonal changes happen in the body. Prolactin increases, you go limp, you have to recover, and according to Taoist sexual practices, according to my experience, you lose energy from an ejaculation. Every ejaculation costs you resources from the body, vital minerals, etc., as well as your life force. That's why you feel fatigued and unmotivated after ejaculating. So when you learn to have non-ejaculatory orgasms, you don't feel depleted. You don't have a refractory period. You are more vital. You have higher libido, you have better erections, you have higher testosterone because you're not emptying your tank, okay? And obviously it's a question of, do you want to have a dynamic where you bust a nut and then you're done for the day or even for a few days? Or do you want to be able to go as long as you want, as many times as you want? The choice is yours, but I think the answer is pretty obvious for most of you. So now the question is, how do we achieve this? How do we achieve the ability to have non-ejaculatory orgasms? And for me, after spending many years studying this work, practicing with it, experimenting, having a lot of failures along the way. It took me a long time to learn this stuff. It took me a decade to put together the model I'm going to share with you, and it's going to save you a lot of time and misunderstanding because there's so many misunderstandings about the male non-ejaculatory orgasms, and the biggest shift happens when you understand what's happening in your nervous system. And really quickly before I get into that, a lot of men ask me, what do these non-ejaculatory orgasms feel like? And you're probably well acquainted with the ejaculatory orgasm, which is 5 to 10 seconds of intense pleasure as your prostate spasms and pumps fluid out your penis. It feels great, it feels fantastic, but for reasons I already mentioned, it's not ideal to do every time. Whereas the non-ejaculatory orgasm, what I'm talking about here is often a full body orgasm experience. You know what it feels like in your penis when you're starting to ejaculate? It's a lovely feeling. Well, imagine that feeling, except it's happening in your entire body. This buildup of immense pleasure happening in your entire body. And instead of only lasting 5 to 10 seconds, it can last several minutes. I've spent 20, 30 minutes in the state of full body orgasm. And it seems like when you really get good at this, there's not necessarily an end to it except for when you choose to. And I'm not exaggerating here. For me, it feels like these waves of pleasure that spread through my entire body. They energize me, they charge me up. I walk away from this type of experience feeling focused, feeling creative, like I want to go out and do things, I want to move my body, I feel fantastic. I don't want to just lay on the couch and doom scroll through social media after this experience. And you probably won't either. So here's where it gets really interesting. The reason that most men cannot experience non-ejaculatory orgasm actually has very little to do with technique and a lot more to do with your nervous system. And to really simplify things, it has to do with which pathway in the nervous system, which pathway in the body you are experiencing pleasure through. If you were like most men, if you're only experiencing ejaculatory orgasms, it's because you have this one specific pathway that your sexual pleasure is integrated into in your body. And that is your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response. This is essentially a stress response. So the sympathetic pathway is marked by a response of tension and stress. You tighten up, you squeeze muscles, you become tense. Like, what do most men do when they're having sex, especially as they're nearing orgasm? They start to tense up, their breathing gets very shallow. So their stress response is kicking in. And this is always going to bring you towards an ejaculation, because ejaculation is a function of your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response. The first question is, why are men stuck in this stress response when it comes to sex? And the simple answer is that it has to do with your conditioning and your early sexual experiences. Most men don't feel a lot of space to really relax and explore their body and feel a lot of like self-love and confidence in their sexual experience in their teenage years. It's often marked by shame, a need to hide their sexuality. It's like, I gotta do it in the bathroom really quick. I gotta bust out a nut before my mom walks in on me. And at the same time, when you're watching porn, you're just overstimulated. So these patterns of shame, of nervousness of being caught, and an urgency to ejaculate quickly, doing this over and over again, it wires in your body's response to it, becomes a reflex, essentially. So you get stuck in this circuit. You get stuck in the ejaculatory model, which looks like this. It looks like sexual stimulation of your penis, tension building up in your body, and eventually that tension builds up to a point where you must ejaculate. Ejaculatory orgasm. And being dominant in this pathway is characterized by having a lot of tension in your pelvic floor. If your pelvic floor is gripping and staying tense during sexual stimulation, you have hypertension patterns, and this is going to lock you in the ejaculatory model and often cause premature ejaculation as well. So this other pathway of potential pleasure in the body, so this is the parasympathetic nervous system. This is your rest and digest response. I feel relaxed, I feel calm. When you don't feel any immediate threats, when you don't feel any like, I need to do this thing right now. Essentially in nature, it's like, there's not a bear trying to kill me. There's not some guy with a gun trying to shoot me. Like, I'm okay, so let's just relax. And my question for you right now is, when was the last time you felt this way? When was the last time you felt just like super calm, super relaxed? Like, you know, if you've ever gone to a park and sat on a bench and just like looked at the trees, listened to a stream, listened to the birds singing. Most modern people are experiencing less and less of this parasympathetic state, this rest and digest, relaxation response. Maybe you're one of those people, maybe you're not. But again, it's important to be aware of that, because when you realize that most people are functioning entirely in this sympathetic fight or flight, I gotta do this thing, I gotta get this project done, this stress, essentially. It's no wonder why we get stuck in the sympathetic model. So have some compassion for yourself. Hope you don't mind, I drink some nice Longjing green tea here. Once again, with this parasympathetic pathway, this is the pathway of full body orgasm, of non-ejaculatory orgasm. Now I wanna make a note here. This isn't exactly like, oh, this is exactly where your stress moves through, this is where your relaxation moves through. I'm just giving you a visual reference to a concept here, which is more conceptual, though I feel that there is overall some truth in that your sympathetic nervous system is more connected to the spine, the back of the body, the spinal pathway, whereas the parasympathetic is more connected to the vagus nerve, which more or less correlates to this location I've drawn here. If you want to experience non-ejaculatory orgasms, you must retrain your sexual pleasure to be dominant in this pathway. If you think of sexual stimulation and the sensations of your genitals, the arousal that's building, all of that, this is information in your nervous system. It's energy, and on a more physical level, it's bioelectricity signals, neurotransmitters moving through your nervous system. And depending which pathway is communicating it, it's going to completely change your experience of sex, and your experience of orgasm will be completely different. And the simple understanding is, one pathway is going to create a buildup of tension into ejaculation, whereas the other pathway, the parasympathetic, is going to create this full body buildup into continuous full body orgasm, potentially without end. How does that sound? And in an ideal world, it would be as simple as that, of like, oh, like I show you this and you say, okay, cool, I just need to stay relaxed, and boom, I'm gonna go do it, and yep, having orgasms, non-ejaculatory orgasms right away. But moving into this pathway is a huge challenge for men. Why? I mean, think for yourself. How are you usually engaging your mind and your body during sex? Think about it. or masturbation. Maybe you were like, you know, I don't really know, Jonathan. I don't really know what I'm doing, which shows that you probably have zero consciousness of what's happening in your body and your mind during sex, because the mind, the way you engage your mind, if you're thinking, if you're worrying, the state of your breathing, all these things affect your nervous system. So I'm just kind of planting some seeds, and you can start to really be aware of these things to shift your state, but that's what we're gonna get into here in a little bit. So the reason why it's a challenge to move to this is because men have both the habitual aspect, you've been doing it a certain way this whole time, it's literally programmed into your body. Like a lot of men have all these layers of tension they aren't even aware of. When I tell clients I'm working with, hey, just stay relaxed during sex. They may tell me, hey, yeah, I'm keeping my pelvic floor relaxed, but I'm still ejaculating very quickly. Well, obviously it's not really relaxed, or that wouldn't be happening. So the thing is, initially it's very overt layers of tension that you're releasing, but it gets very, very subtle. And if you're like me, as a teenager, when I was masturbating, I would always grip my pelvic floor because it increased these sharp signals of pleasure, this really intensely nice feeling, but it always kept me on the edge of ejaculating. And I will say that one of the characteristics of the sympathetic nervous system, sexual pleasure moving through it, is that it's very sharp, very obvious, sharp pleasure. And we tend to favor that. Whereas the parasympathetic nervous system, it's more like these deep resonant waves of pleasure that are initially more subtle because we're not really that sensitive to them, because we're so used to overstimulation, essentially. And so men tend to do things that create that sharp response, that sharp pleasure, which is happening in conjunction with tension. So I want you to think about this difference between this sharp, obvious pleasure that's moving towards ejaculation versus tuning into more subtle, initially subtle layers of pleasure, which are more wave-like. They're more magnetic. And what may paint a picture here is usually you're probably gripping, you're tensing as your penis is being stimulated. Well, what if you develop a response of relaxing, releasing, letting go, in your pelvic floor, in your abdomen, all the way up your body? What if that becomes your response to sexual pleasure? This starts to move you in this pathway, and the sensation of pleasure changes. Initially, it's a little more subtle, it's different, but then it becomes deeper. It becomes more resonant. Have you ever had butterflies in your stomach? It's a little bit similar to that feeling, but it gets very, very deep, like this deep orgasmic buildup that instead of feeling like it needs to explode out of you, it feels like it wants to move deeper into you. So I'm just communicating some of the differences, the subtleties, the things you're going to feel when you start moving into this model. So now you have an understanding of these two different pathways of sexual pleasure. The question is, how do you retrain yourself to move in the direction of relaxation response so that you have non-ejaculatory orgasm? So let's get into this part. This next section is where the transformation really happens. So I'm going to use another analogy here that I think will be very helpful for this. Okay, so this represents a jungle, okay? From above in the jungle. It's just a mess of trees and bushes and everything, and you're here in the middle of it. There's a little bit of a clearing here, right? Initially, at some point, you had zero experience with orgasm and sexual pleasure. It was brand new to you. And so you were exploring this jungle with zero expectation, with zero familiarity. It was a brand new experience. So as you started to feel around, you're initially just kind of like, hey, I don't know where I'm going, like, let's kind of move this bush out of the way, see what happens. But if you're like most men, because of the experience I already talked about of porn and shame and not a lot of time to experience your sexuality, you started to carve a certain pathway through this jungle, so to speak, that became, to get to this destination, we'll say that the destination is orgasm. So orgasm is just to make it clear here, you've carved a path here to orgasm. Maybe you had some little side branches here in the beginning, like maybe initially, if you're like me, when you first started masturbating, you were having non-ejaculatory experiences, but over time, it became dominant by this pathway to orgasm, looking this one pathway. We'll say this is the ejaculatory pathway. And that's what became familiar to you. So every time you were masturbating or having sex, you're like, well, I know if I go this way, it's going to lead me to orgasm. It's a well-worn path. There's no resistance, there's no trees or bushes in your way, so it's easy just to walk on that pathway towards orgasm, which in this case looks like I'm squeezing my pelvic floor, I'm tightening muscles, I'm tensing, and I'm just going towards ejaculation. So it's a very, very familiar pathway. Now when you go to have sex, you may think, well, I would like to last longer, or in this case, I would like to have non-ejaculatory orgasms, but you tend to follow the path of least resistance, what's familiar, what's ingrained into your body and your mind, so you find yourself constantly going back to this pathway towards ejaculatory orgasm. Ejaculatory orgasm. So now we want to get, I'll just write NEO, which stands for non-ejaculatory orgasm. You want to be Neo in the Matrix, man. You want to take the red pill and wake up. So what's happening now is, this is the process for men. Is you want to get down here, but this pathway is so worn, you keep finding yourself going back to it. And you may make some progress, like you may finally cut a tiny little rough path through this jungle. So maybe you had one practice session where you're super aware, you're staying relaxed, you're doing all the things I'm going to share with you that you should do to experience non-ejaculatory orgasms. You do it once, but then your next session, because this pathway is just so familiar, you find yourself going back down it. So you kind of carved a path here, but then it gets overgrown. I think this metaphor helps understanding what it's like to train to do this. It's not easy. You're completely changing your approach. It's like relearning how to walk, because we always tend to go back to doing things in an unconscious way, what's most familiar for us. So I'm just sharing this to see that this is a process, and it's not like you do what I'm telling you to do one time, you're going to get it perfectly. That's probably not going to happen. But what happens is, over time, you can strengthen this pathway more and more and more, and actually wear a path through it. This is what sexual kung fu is all about, is repeated training, mind-body training, and eventually you will develop this strong pathway towards non-ejaculatory orgasm. So now you're still going to have a pathway towards ejaculatory orgasm. I don't think any man is going to lose the ability to have ejaculatory orgasm. I never did. But now you'll also have this path that you've worn that brings you to non-ejaculatory orgasm based on doing something entirely different. So this is where men get really stuck. They want to have a non-ejaculatory orgasm. They want to go down here, but they're going this way. They're doing the things that have habitually brought them to ejaculatory orgasm, and they get frustrated. Well, I'm building up, and I'm trying to redirect it at the last minute into a non-ejaculatory orgasm, and it simply doesn't work. And when we talk about techniques like, doing Kegels, doing the squeeze and hold technique where you hit the point of no return and try to Kegel off to experience a dry orgasm, you're still on this pathway of tension and sharp sexual pleasure. It's still taking you this direction. So this also represents these two pathways in your nervous system. So now I'm going to give you some practical tips that will help you to start carving your way, creating this new pathway in your mind and body towards non-ejaculatory orgasm. The first thing is to practice absolute mental and physical relaxation during sexual stimulation. Notice your tendency to contract, to tighten up, especially the pelvic floor region, and relax deeply. Try to remember that every time you feel sexual pleasure, to just let your body melt and relax. Practicing progressive relaxation exercises, there's plenty of guided progressive relaxation practices on YouTube, whatever, you can find that. I don't feel like it's worth my time to teach what thousands of other people are teaching. I want to share the things that people aren't teaching. So essentially just notice the tension that arises in your body and just keep releasing, keep relaxing. You'll find yourself constantly wanting to squeeze because it feels good. It brings that sharp pleasure. But again, you're going back in that direction of ejaculatory orgasm. So practice creating waves of release when you're sexually stimulating. It's good to practice this stuff on your own with self-stimulation, and then you'll have some habits that you can bring into sex, and you do the same thing essentially. And mental release as well. Instead of thinking a lot of thoughts like, whoa, what's happening next? What's the orgasm going to be like? Why am I not having an orgasm? Or fantasizing, visual stimulation. Relax your mind as well. The mind and body are intimately connected. So tension in the mind is going to create tension in your body. So just release into the sexual pleasure. Make it like a meditation. And this starts to train you. The other thing you do is notice your tendency to want to contract. Notice how you want to squeeze your pelvic floor. You want to tighten up your abdomen and breathe really shallow. Notice that happening and choose to relax instead. It's going to take some training. You have to constantly be aware of this. The other thing is using your deep breathing. Relax is number one. Second thing, breathe. Deep breathing. Ideally deep abdominal breathing. For a lot of men, if you're new to these things I'm sharing with you, you've probably never taken full deep breaths during sexual pleasure. And I can tell you, it's a game changer. Because breath is intimately connected to the state of your nervous system. And when your breath gets really shallow, tense, really short, and up high in your chest, you get into fight or flight mode. So deep, full belly breathing helps you to stay in that parasympathetic, and it creates this container for arousal to build up. And these are the simple things to start with. Literally, if you just focus on relaxation and deep breathing, and I mean deep relaxation, especially in your pelvic floor. Just these things alone are going to bring you to dramatically deeper levels of pleasure and sexual experience. And I want you to think of the non-ejaculatory orgasm as it's a state that you enter into. Instead of like this obvious thing that happens, it's not as sharp and obvious as the ejaculatory orgasm. It's more of this wave-like state of resonant pleasure that simply moves through your body and builds subtly over time. It's a whole different experience. It's something you enter into and sustain rather than like the ejaculatory peak orgasm where it's like, oh, it's there, it started, now I'm ejaculating, now it's over. It's not so obvious. So just a subtlety there. So relaxation and breath alone are going to bring you very far. Now, the other thing here it's important to mention is that sexual kung fu is a whole holistic system of training, mind and body. And it's not just what you're doing during sex. It's important that you engage in activities that help you to balance your nervous system and increase your mind and body awareness. So that's why my programs consist of deep layers of training. It's not just sexual practice. There's a lot of that, don't get me wrong, but I use Qigong, which is an incredible practice that opens up the nervous system, opens up your energy channels, and will really help you make the shift towards parasympathetic. Plus, it will sensitize you to really feel this orgasmic energy and be able to move it through your body. Doing yoga, meditation, breath work, all of these things help to balance your nervous system and open up your body and will carry over very well into your sexual practice. So it's essentially like, think of your whole lifestyle as supporting this process into moving into parasympathetic dominance, moving into this pathway of being able to release into non-ejaculatory orgasms instead of tense and resist into an ejaculatory orgasm. Patience. Another key principle here is patience. Your sexual patterns were not developed in one day. You're probably not going to get rid of them or change them in one day. So understand that this is a process and see every sexual session, whether it's self-pleasure or sex with a partner, see it every single one as an opportunity to experience something new. Rather than being attached to an outcome like, I must blow my partner's mind or else I'm a failure, or I must have this non-ejaculatory orgasm the first time I do it, it's setting yourself up to fail. This is a long-term process. It's kung fu, skill, discipline attained through a period of time of intensive training. That's how you develop the stuff. So be patient and enjoy the process. At advanced level here, when you really get good at this, when you really develop this parasympathetic pathway in your body, you can have rough, intense sex and be in full control of your ejaculation. This may have sounded up to this point like, whoa, geez, saying relax and parasympathetic, like, am I supposed to just lay there like a dead worm and just like barely move? That sounds boring. No, it's not like that at all. Internally, you're relaxed and in parasympathetic, but externally, you can be having vigorous, rough, intensive sex. You can be going to Pound Town, baby, and be moving into this full body orgasmic experience and having complete control of ejaculation. That's a more advanced level, but that's what this training leads to. And if you'd like me to make a video going deeper into this concept of being able to maintain complete parasympathetic dominance while having rough, intensive sex, let me know in the comments below. And remember, a stress response is a resistance. It's a tightening up. It's almost like a self-protection. You're learning to release. You will feel more vulnerable. You will feel more open. And the benefit of this is that you open deeper into pleasure and orgasm. You open deeper into connection with your partner and yourself. And you'll find that this process actually helps you open more into the world, to be your true authentic self, to be the greatest version of yourself, and you're going to find your whole life becomes orgasmic as you work with this process. It may sound silly, but this all carries over into your day-to-day life. The bedroom is where our beliefs about ourselves, our insecurities, all these things come out. And so it's a very holistic way to address a lot of different things. Work with your sexuality. And that's why I love this work. I love helping men make this shift into sexual mastery. And this is something that you can do. You just simply have to make a choice of, I'm going to commit to this and I'm going to train and do this. So now what I want you to do is watch a video I made which will help you to retrain your pelvic floor to stay completely relaxed during sex. This will take what I've shared with you today in this video and will help you go to a deeper level of it. So here's that video, and make sure you get my free ebook which has powerful exercises that will help you to master your ejaculation control and will help you with this process of creating this new pathway of non-ejaculatory orgasm. Give this video a like. If you want to blow one of your friends' minds, share this video with them. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and have a great day, my friend. Good luck on your sexual journey.